Alright. For those watching with the VODs, welcome. Welcome back to a new show, or a new series that I'm bringing to this YouTube channel, which is Card Review. Similar to meme review, but we're going to be looking at cards instead. So, you're probably going to be seeing a bit of a mix and match here over there. I might be looking at some Digimon TCG reviews. You might see some Vanguard Overdress reviews. All kinds of things. So, if you like this kind of content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let's get on with the video. Card Review! Here we have ourselves the Agumon. The new Agumon representing the support for the Bond of Courage. Agumon, during all turns, once per turn, when you play a tamer with the name Taikamiya, you get to gain 1 memory. Now this applies on both players' turns. This is pretty good, considering that when you check it in security, you could potentially end someone's turn or limit the amount of plays that they were attempting to do. And its inheritable effect is, if this Digimon is a Bond of Courage while it's during your turn, this Digimon gains security attack +1. That is just pretty good when we look into the Bond of Courage later, but solid inheritable effect. Gaining a security attack +1. Limited to only to Agumon Bond of Courage, but when we look at the rest of the support, we'll see that that really doesn't matter. Agumon, I rate this a solid 8 out of 10. This is what it needs to do, and supports the deck for the Bond of Courage deck very nicely. Next card. We have ourselves the new Red Rookie Shoutmon. The new Red Rookie Shoutmon is a support for the already pre-existing Shoutmon deck that came in as set 5. Only has 1 ability, which is the inheritable when attacking once per turn. If this unit has advance, trigger draw 1. This is already very good for the Red Shoutmon deck because Red Shoutmon has a lot of inherent searching effects. It didn't have as much inherent draw power. It had to use cards like Koromon that required you to having an Omnimon or a Greymon in order to get that draw 1. However, majority of the time you'll be on a card named Shoutmon, so most of the time you won't be getting that draw 1 effect. So, having more cards to draw power, always very good. Especially for a color like red that didn't have as much card advantage in the first place. Pretty good. This card, I would give it honestly more along the lines of a 6. It's a card that's not necessarily needed in the Shoutmon deck, but it is nice to have. So you could probably definitely see it some play. As to whether it will be played or not is up to player's preference. That's why I would give it a 6. Next card. Our next rookie we look at is the new and featured Hakemon. We're seeing that Red has all the searchers, as we can see from this card here. On play, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Add up to 2 Digimon cards with the name Hakemon, Justmon, or Systemon in its name from among them, and put them into your hand. And put the remaining cards in the bottom of your deck in any order. Just a standard searcher, but it searches for 2 cards, so inherently a +1. Very, very good effect. I'm honestly pretty jealous. I'm pretty jealous of how much searchers that Red has as a black colored main. This card, this one is just a solid searcher all around. Does what it needs to do. It doesn't have an inheritable effect, so it could be better, but that's why I will give this card an 8 out of 10. If it had an inheritable effect, like the Shoutmon that checks top 5, as well as having an inheritable effect, I would have given it a 10, but this card is a solid 8 in my books. Next card. The next card we'll be looking at here is the lovely Flamemon. It is a support for the hybrid deck, actually. It is surprising considering that Red is getting a lot of legacy support in this set. We have already from 4 cards, support for 4 different types of decks. All in one set. All of them have been also very quality as well. I'm impressed. 4 costs to play normally, which means you most likely want to just evolve it. You would rather evolve this than anything else. You definitely don't want to be hard playing this for 4 cost. Simple ability of inheritable. While this Digimon has hybrid form, or 10 warriors in its type, it gains piercing. Now, one of the things that the hybrid deck was lacking is because its boss monster was Ancient Greymon. And Ancient Greymon, while it has a very powerful effect of gaining a bunch of security, it had the inherent flaw of not being a hybrid type. It is a 10 warriors type, so it is unsearchable. And also, it is easily blocked. So all that extra security has no threat pressure whatsoever. However, this rookie right here supports the deck quite nicely in giving it piercing, and as well as supporting the 10 warriors type, which is what Red desperately needed, at least for the Red hybrid deck. Next card. Now, we're getting onto the actual boss monsters for Red. But before we get to that, let's go to the actual Tamer card first. So, the Agumon Bond of Courage got a nice looking Taikamiya in its college form, looking very slick, if you ask me, having two main effects. The secondary security effect has been the same for all tamers. When you check it in security, you get to play it for free. Now that is already very good, but also synergizes quite well with the Agumon we just looked at, because every time you play a Taikamiya, you gain 1 memory once per turn. So imagine checking a Taikamiya in your security. Your opponent has 0 memory. Now you check a Taikamiya, now plus 1 memory, now it's your turn. Just like that. You cheese out your opponent thanks to this card, and that's why I gave this card a solid 8 out of 10 before. So let's get to the actual main effect of Taikamiya. It is a very strong effect if you ask me. During your turn, when your Digimon with Agumon or Greymon in the name move from breeding area to the battle area, you gain 1 memory and you trigger draw 1. So not only do you gain extra memory from moving your stuff onto the board, you get to draw an extra card, which is already very good for Red considering how much it was lacking draw power to begin with. And before, it was struggling a little bit in terms of memory gaining, so that extra memory could definitely help cheese it out to reach that 4 memory to go into like a Blitz Greymon, or even 5 memory to go into an Ancient Greymon, or even getting into 3 memory if your opponent tries to memory starve you and you didn't have like a Marcus Damon or another Taikamiya, for example. During your main phase, once per turn, you can Digivolve your Agumon into an Agumon Bond of Courage by paying its memory cost without looking at its level requirements. And if you do, you trash the top 2 cards of your security stack, and at the end of your turn, if you have 1 or more security, that Digimon dies at the end of turn. So normally, that's supposed to be at a bit of a drawback, but when we get to look at the Bond of Courage, you'll see how much of an OP effect that really is. And also, this grants a bit of a comeback mechanic with Red, because normally Red's progression and board presence is relatively slow. So having a card like this to just warp right back up to a level 7, mind you, is incredibly strong. And some people might argue it's a little broken, but we'll see. We'll see how it is in actual tournament practice. Taikamiya, I give it a 10 out of 10. Amazing card, good in every right. Costs only 3 memory, would only cost 2 memory if you have the Agumon on the board, and lets you gain memory and draw cards, and even lets you warp Digivolve, so essentially allowing you to turbo into your boss monster for very minimal repercussions. Next card. Now let's get on to the actual boss monsters. We talked a lot about the Agumon Bond of Courage, but let us see what this Agumon Bond of Courage really does. So, the Agumon Bond of Courage has 2 abilities. Relatively simple, and it's also 3 cost to evolve, keep that in mind. So when you do the Warp Digivolve with the Taikamiya, it will only cost 3 memory, which going into a level 7 is pretty cheap. That is very, very cheap for a level 6. Level 7. Considering that level 7s are usually 6 cost, so usually when you go into one, it would normally end your turn. But usually they would have like a very strong on-Digivolution effect. But this only costs 3 memory, which means it must have a very powerful on-board presence effect. So let's see what it does. When attacking, if you have a Tamer on the field, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 13,000 DP or less. DP refers to the number on the top right here, for those of you who don't know anything about the Digimon TCG, and that represents how much power, attack power, that card has. And as you can tell, this is a level 7, which is the highest level a Digimon can go, and you can already tell with 14,000 DP, that is already pretty high. So 13,000 DP would usually mean any card that is level 6 or below. So majority of the time, you'll be killing most things. You'll be destroying most things, and it's on attack for no cost. So very, very strong effect already for controlling the board. And its second effect is when your opponent's Digimon are deleted, trash 1 card from the top of your opponent's security stack. So what that means is they essentially take a damage without even doing a security check, which is already very, very strong. And fun fact for you, if you have more than one of these on the board, as soon as you attack with one of them, both of their trash security stack would both activate on cue, so you would be able to trash multiple securities at once, essentially swinging for lethal very early on. Very, very powerful effect. And in combination with the Agumon, with the inheritable of, if your Digimon is a Bond of Courage, gain security attack +1. By itself, this Bond of Courage could potentially take out 3 security on his own. A very powerful effect while maintaining control on the board. So it's definitely nice to see for Red. You can imagine it when Red is down in the dumps. Maybe they're up against Yellow or something and their board just got wiped, and they're looking very, they're put in a very disadvantageous position. But they still have an Agumon in the racing area, and they have the tie on the board. Bring it up, go into this, swing for game. Very, very strong combo indeed. So you can definitely be seeing this on the competitive red decks for sure. I've done some testing with it off stream, and I found that Agumon Bond of Courage deck that's just built based on Agumon Bond of Courage is definitely a lot stronger than using it as a tech option, which I've seen some people try to do, because it is just a 3-card package, but it does take up space. It's not the same as Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can just have a 3-card package and just tech it in like in any Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. Agumon Bond of Courage, it is a very, very strong card. I'm going to give it a solid 10 on the scale. And the reason why I give it a solid 10 is because it does what it needs to do, kills any card on the field for practically no cost, and allows you to trash a card from your opponent's security stack, which means you basically get a damage in before they can even have a chance to respond. And that in itself is already very good and is a game-winning finisher for sure. Next card. Let's go on to the last boss monster for red. We have the Jesmon. Jesmon with 11,000 power, a bit more on the low side, if I'm being perfectly honest these days, mainly because a lot of Digimon these days have more than 11,000 power, because otherwise it'd be rather vulnerable, but we can see what kind of abilities they have to make up for it. 3 costs to evolve, which is relatively average and cheap, so majority of the time they'll be evolving into this and be getting its value right away. So it has 2 abilities. When attacking, you may play a Digimon card with Systemon in its name from your hand or trash, without paying its memory cost. We'll be looking into the Systemons a little bit later, but essentially what this means is on attack, get a +1 body on the board, which is already very good considering that, as I mentioned before, Red's progression has normally been relatively low. So what I mean by that is that majority of the time, Red is not going to have a lot of Digimon on the board because they usually focus on trying to have one guy carrying them to victory with very strong inheritable effects and main effects. So this card now essentially allows you to build up your board so that we can have multiple attacks on the board in case your big boss monster dies, and generate advantage that way. And its second effect is when you play another Digimon, this Digimon gains 3000 DP and gains piercing for the turn. For those of you who don't know what piercing means, is if this Digimon destroys another Digimon by battle, you get to make your opponent do a security check. And it gives them an extra power as well. So that 11,000 power is looking to be around 14,000 power, which is around the same level as some level 7s. So it's not likely to die in security check either. So that 11,000 power is more of a nerf on defense to make sure it's not too powerful, since it's already good on offense. Jesmon, I give this card a solid 8 out of 10. The only reason why I give it a solid 8 out of 10 is because we haven't seen the rest of the Jesmon package yet, but so far it is looking to be incredibly good in generating card advantage and having some board presence, as well as putting some damage on the board as well. But by itself, it's nothing too spectacular, and that's why I'll give it an 8. In fact, maybe I'll bring it up to a 9, because it gives that board presence that Red has been missing for a while. Next card. Let's go on to the actual Sistermons. The Sistermons that Jesmon is able to play for free. So Systemon Noir is a white card, 4 cost to play normally, so which is actually relatively cheap for a level 4. And it has no Digivolution cost, which means you cannot Digivolve into it normally, so that is a bit of an unfortunate side for Red, because that means normally when you Digivolve, you want to Digivolve on top of your cards to draw one, and that is how you maintain your advantage and cycle through your deck to dig for your pieces. So this is essentially a dead card in space until you have Jesmon on the field to try and turbo into it. But that's why we have cards like Hakemon to search to kind of make up for that. But let's go on to its actual effects. So, during all turns, all your Digimon with Hakemon in their name, or if they are Royal Knight type, they get 2,000 power during both players' turns. So if we take that into consideration with Jesmon, on attack, you get to play a Systemon for free. And when you play a card, you get 3,000 DP, making it 14,000 power. And with the Systemon Noir, it'll become 16,000 power, essentially making it indestructible. For reference, the strongest, highest DP Digimon that an opponent can check in security is only 15,000 DP, barring any extra effects. So 16,000 DP is a relatively safe number. and is what makes it pretty strong. And also that extra 2000 DP will make sure that Jessamon is 13,000 power at least during your opponent's turn, which means it's less likely for your opponent to try and swing over it when it comes to their turn. So it makes it more likely that Jessamon will live during your opponent's turn, barring any extra removal card effects like a Terra Force or yellow being yellow as usual. Now, on its second effect is on play, so when you play it via a card effect, or just play it normally, you gain 1 memory. So normally this would be a 4 cost. If you play it hard cast, it would be a 3 cost, which is a relatively cheap cost for a level 4, but it doesn't really do anything else other than giving the power, so it's okay to play normally. But in combination with Jessamon, it is very strong, because when you play it for free, you get an extra memory, meaning you have more room to do whatever you want to do during your turn, or have a nice play extension during your turn, however you like. And that in itself is what makes this card relatively good. So, and in terms of rating, I would give this card a 6 out of 10. And the reason why I would give it a 6 out of 10 is because in combination with certain cards, it is good, but by itself, it is rather clunky and doesn't really help cycle through your deck and into your pieces. It's just a play extender card, if you will, or a nice support card. So I wouldn't see it as more than a 2 or a 3 of. Next card, Systemon Blanc. This is the last Systemon that we've seen in the set. There is another Systemon in the lore, but we have no clue on whether we're going to see any more Systemons in this set. But let's go on to this one. It is a rookie, level 3 costs to play normally, relatively standard for a rookie, and hard playing it won't feel that bad either, considering that the cost is relatively normal. It has 2 abilities. First ability is, during all players' turn, if you have a Digimon with Hakemon in its name, or a Digimon with Royal Knight in its type, all of your Systemon in the name gain Blocker. Now that in itself is a relatively strong effect, because blockers are what allows you to redirect attacks and help prevent you from losing the game. So, with Jessamon, when you get to play your Systemons out for free, if you manage to get this card out on the field, all those Systemons you played out on the field can gain Blocker, giving it even more opportunities for Jessamon to live. Because normally what would happen is you would probably block with your Systemon, and because they're relatively low DP, they will die. But it doesn't matter if they die, because Jessamon can just get them back from the trash for free. Amazing synergy, if you ask me. And on play, trigger draw 1. Now that in itself is pretty good. So because it's a rookie, you won't be able to, a rookie white card with no Digivolution cost requirements, meaning you are not allowed to Digivolve into this normally, so you're missing out on some cycle over there. However, the on-play trigger draw 1 allows you to draw an extra card, so you're making up for it for the lack of cycle anyways. So that in itself is what makes it better than Systemon Noir for sure, because you're still able to cycle through your deck to find your pieces, and having a layer of protection to help prevent you from losing or protect your boss monster is always nice for red to have. In terms of ratings, I will give this card a solid... I'll give this a solid 7 out of 10. And the reason why I give it a solid 7 out of 10 is because it still is a white card, so it doesn't allow you to cycle you through your deck normally from Digivolution. So if you have your opening hand and you have no rookies except for this card in your hand, you're missing out on some draw cycle. So that is the inherent flaw on that one. But you do at least get the draw 1. It gives all your Systemon's blockers to help keep you from dying, so that part is what kind of makes up for it. And fun fact for you, because these are white cards, it allows you to play white option cards without needing to having a white tamer on the field. So that in itself is also pretty good if you wanted to use cards like this card right here, Mega Digimon Fusion. This card is what essentially allows you to go from a level 6 to a level 7 for 0 cost. But it is a white option card, and that in itself means that you can't play it normally unless you have a white Digimon or a white tamer on the field. But as we saw before, those Systemons are in fact white cards, so we have some more inherent synergy there. So it's looking to be pretty strong combinations for sure. The combinations are endless for Jessamon. So as much as I gave my initial rating of giving it only an 8 out of 10, it definitely has room for improvement, or there's a lot of combinations you can do with this Jessamon deck for sure. Very exciting for the red deck. That does it for the first episode of Card Review. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys found it informative, or if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I'll be sure to try and answer them. And if you have any other opinions, also leave them in the comments down below, because I'm curious to hear what you guys think as well. And yeah, if you gotta manage to get this far, maybe leave a like, you know? Maybe subscribe. It's free. And that's a great price.